name's Bhavisha. I work within operational risk at New York Life Insurance Company. So within operational risk, I'm the corporate vice president there. I manage governance for operational risk, so it's around policies, programs, looking at risk enterprise-wide as opposed to specializing in a specific area within risk like third-party risk or information security. We have quite a lot of meetings because a lot of our work is actually done in partnership and requires feedback from multiple sources because we impact the whole enterprise. Outside of that, there's also a lot of individual work in designing and drafting policies, looking online at benchmarking against other companies because we want to make sure we're also best in class for our risk management practices. So in terms of risk, I would say the best way to define it is basically how do you want to ensure there aren't problems in the company, whether it be cyber risk, so people going into our network and stealing information, or maybe it be third-party risk, which could be something like maybe we didn't sign contracts properly with our third parties, and so maybe they're doing improper practices that may not align with our vision, our goals, or organization values. So as we think about my role in risk governance, it's basically to ensure everyone within the company is following the same guidelines, is basically adhering to policies and standards, and then how do we measure that they're doing those activities. So I actually have always been in risk, but in grad school I actually did, and I want to say it was almost like a side job. I helped the University of Virginia Hospital to determine the best method for outpatient care for health for people who had cardiac arrest. So almost like an optimal solution or optimal route. So if you were impacted somewhere in the state of Virginia, what was the best hospital the ambulance could take you to, based on time, based on resources, based on even like the number of beds available in that hospital. And so that job really just helped me to think outside the box and try to determine like optimal solutions. And you'll find any job in risk is finding the best and optimal solutions. So starting from there, I went into credit risk, which in that job, my job was to find the optimal formula, you could say, to figure out when to cancel a customer at American Express, or when to cancel, when to place your card with an outside agency for collections if you didn't pay. So it was trying to define a formula where if all the numbers fit in right, based on how aged your card was, or what your balance was, or what your pay history was, or your FICO score was, we'd figure out some kind of formula to figure out when you should be placed to an outside agency, or when we should cancel your card or collect. So those types of statistical kind of just analytical thinking really has helped me to then think outside the box in the current job, which is in risk assessment, is trying to figure out like the right formula as to when is it okay to accept the risk versus measure it, and how far you are in that risk scale where we should be worried about the activities, because there's always risk, but you want to find a balance with that. So I had actually a few jobs, but most of them were within customer relations. The first one was in telemarketing. I worked for Omaha Steaks, selling different packages that they had through the phone. It was interesting because one thing about me is I'm vegetarian, so I had to use a lot of creative tactics to sell Omaha Steaks. So knowing what the customer wants, speaking with friends, identifying like what is it people are looking for in steaks, so that I could better assist customers or even try to sell steaks. And so I had that job for a short while, and then my parents owned a hotel, so another thing I did was help with reception, like front desk, which the Omaha Steaks job actually helped me prepare me for that, because how to greet a customer, how to be polite but still, how to deal with difficult situations, which you'll probably find in any customer service job. And then straight from there, I actually went to college. And so those were probably my early on careers or early on jobs. I didn't actually. When I went to grad school and I got my master's in statistics, I actually wanted to be in more of a medical or bio field, doing either biostatistics, something along the lines of like working with the medical industry, because that was very intriguing to me. So when I took the job in risk and credit at American Express, I kind of took a risk in risk management. I took a risk out there, simply because I enjoyed kind of what the job was, what the day-to-day was like, as opposed to the field. So I did my undergraduate in economics and business. There was a business school also at Rutgers, and statistics. And so I actually stayed. I was younger for my age in college, so I stayed for 5 years as opposed to 4, and did the 3 degrees. And then I took a year to work at a startup insurance company, and then went to grad school straight after for statistics. So there's actually risk at any company, and I think people nowadays are actually focusing more on honing in on that risk, especially operational risk, which occurs at every company. So my company is 10,000 plus employees, but really, I've seen all companies now try to focus on this area, because this is where you really quantify losses to a company, or basically try to understand like what type of risks are out there and how can you mitigate them so you can avoid future losses to the company as well. So I think, the benefit is you get to see a lot of different people, different backgrounds. You get to understand their path or their journey they took, and you could learn from that. I think it helps also as you're trying to figure out what you want to do, and you're still not sure about it. It gives you an opportunity to move around the company, and a lot of companies do encourage you to move around as opposed to step out of the company and look for something new. So this opens the doors to seeing other areas within the company. As in terms of like an opportunity for that, or just a disadvantage to that, is if you're starting out new, it can be a little bit scary, just like going into a big school, like trying to navigate your path, figuring out the who's who, trying to create a name for yourself. It makes it a little bit more challenging because you really have to distinguish yourself amongst your peers. So it works either way. I think it's just, where you are in your place, and where you want to go, and really where you want to see yourself going. It helps if you're in a bigger place, because then you can navigate yourself more and figure out other avenues, change jobs. But if you're in a smaller company, it might be a bit more challenging to do that. So I don't have certifications. However, there are risk certifications you can get, whether it be in information security or just general risk certifications. Really, it's more a matter of preference and where you apply and what's required. I have a master's in statistics, so some of the analytical mindset is still within that degree, but it's definitely encouraged to get those. So being that I'm in governance or risk governance, the people that are really my customers are people in the company. I don't work with the actual customers of New York Life who are buying policies. I work within the company because I'm trying to basically work with them to show what risk is, the value of learning how to quantify that risk, and how to mitigate, like how to solve for issues, and what we can do kind of combined as a group, and so that we could determine like what the best route to take, even if it may mean we have some losses here and there, but how can we all work together to solve for issues or avoid future issues. So my job is salary, and most often in these risk positions it is salary, unless you're in consulting, in which case it would be hourly. This job is actually, quite interesting and fun because it's something I enjoy doing. So it's not that it inhibits me to do other things, but I think time obviously is a big one. So I have 2 kids, so it does make it hard sometimes to juggle time, and make sure I'm efficient there, but also efficient at home. So it's really, I have some flexibility to work from home, or I have flexibility to come in a little late or leave a little early. So I try to just balance the two and make it work some way, somehow. I think solving problems. So I went in statistics because I enjoyed like figuring out optimal solutions or solving for problems. in a different way, I solve for problems. I try to figure out how to reduce risk in the company. So like, for example, like if people aren't adhering to policies, I can figure out a way in a quantitative way, but also qualitative, like how can we figure out who's not abiding to those policies and what the impact of that is. So it's solving problems day to day. Convincing others that this is important. I think that's the most important thing in any risk function, is to show others the value of what it means to be in this space. So to show others why we care about reducing risk, or to show others why it's important for them to do some of the activities I'm asking them to do, which are more check the box or extra steps in their day to day, but to show them the value in that. I think the biggest lesson as years have passed in my career is how big relationship management is, and the art of communication, like influencing people, trying to get people to buy into your ideas. Because someone once always told me, like, you could take any job, anyone can do the job. It's more how do you navigate and make sure you're the best at the job. Because we can always learn all these different fields through books, through classes, through seminars, but how are you going to be best at it? So knowing your customers, knowing how to communicate different styles to different customers, knowing how to influence folks to think your viewpoints or to follow your view. So I actually, I worked at American Express 13 years, and I was looking for something new. I had been in the current role 7-8 years, and I had actually turned on my LinkedIn to show that I was searching, and someone had reached out to me. I would definitely say start with Google. There are a lot of resources, even if you just go on the web and search like risk professionals. You could see certifications that are required. You could see consulting agencies opining on like what it means to be a risk professional, and LinkedIn has some very great resources. In fact, when I was first starting kind of thinking leaving American Express and where do I want to go, I actually even looked at resumes of other people in that profession to say how did they navigate their career. Like if they had a job at American Express, let's say, for risk, where did they go next? What was like their path? Because just because I'm in risk governance or operational risk governance doesn't mean my next job has to be in operational risk governance. I could go to compliance, or I could go to audit, or sit in a business doing some kind of risk function.